and welcome everyone to day one of the LEC 2024 Spring Playoffs live from the Riot Games Arena here in Berlin, Germany. And you can see the beautiful colors we have for spring. Today, we will take the next step for teams on their way to Chengdu, China for MSI, kicking off with a surprise regular runner-up, Vitality facing off against SK Gaming. I'm Laure, and I'll be joined by Dagda and Boxa. How are you guys doing?
I'm good. I mean, I'm feeling very patriotic with the new colors. I'm like, do I salute or what do I do here, you know?
Spring colors, and even in real life, if you live in Berlin, actually. Good weather so far. Hi, Boxa. Nice to have you back.
Yeah, great to be back. Happy to be here, of course.
Yeah, a lot of things to see here. But before we talk about playoffs, we finished regular season last week with Rogue and Carmine being eliminated. Same story as in winter. These teams will have a few months to rebuild. I think it's going to be a necessary rebuild for them. But let's focus on the teams we have left here. 8 teams. They did not all make it the same way to playoffs. What's harder for others?
I'm just shocked that we came into our very last day and literally every game mattered.
I know.
Like up until
Feels
the wire, we didn't know what way it was going to go. But Fnatic taking the top spot, Vitality taking second, G2 shifting down to third. It was absolutely nuts that was how our last day cracked out.
I also think it's a bit funny that the bracket is more or less the same as it was in Winter Split. The writers literally copying the homework that they did months ago. But it's really exciting. I'm so curious to see how it's going to play out, because then, like, MDK was, such a surprise. They dropped down to the lower bracket, had the deep run, meaning that now we also can't know what to expect.
I think it's going to be a good way to see how much progress teams made since winter with this same face-off. But let's take a look at the players bracket. As we see, a spot at MSI is on the line here in spring. The champions will be the first seed, as G2 is the winner champion. They will be the second seed. Although, if G2 wins here again, the second seed will be the team with the most championship points. So every series matters as well.
Which is sick.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see what way this is going to pan out, because, as you said, we got a little bit of like G2 Mad Lions Koi that are in there. I mean, Fnatic and Vitality getting to pick their opponents. I mean, expect to have a bit of an easier time for them coming into today, but we'll have to wait and see.
And little information here for League of Legends Enjoyer. This is Mega Week. This week. It's not Super Week. Super Week was in the past. We have 4 game days today, tomorrow, Monday, and Tuesday. So yeah, enjoy the beginning of playoffs here with a new patch as well. 14.6 will be the patch we'll be playing on during the entirety of playoffs, which means several things. Azir is back. We'll see which teams grabs the champion again, as he was one of the center, I want to say, champions in the mid lane before he was disabled.
100%. I mean, the fact that he just warps the entire mid lane meta is huge. You can get push, which sets up for junglers. You've got like great CC to enable your team. And I think there's going to be a lot of teams like, say, Humanoid. He's going to be very happy, who's like, hey, now I've got my Azir back. This is going to be great. But there might be other teams who are like, oh, crap, this kind of takes out a lot of the teams and compositions that we really liked, would say, like Nico and that kind of stuff.
Well, I'm just excited to talk to you about a little something, because as some of you may already have realized, after the hotfix nerfs we saw in the LEC recently for Smolder, the champion already has a negative win rate. Now, with some additional nerfs, it's pretty much dead. Like, we're not gonna have to worry about the dragon anymore. It is gone, both solo queue and pro play. Pretty brutal, but it was necessary. It needed to happen.
It's almost making me sad, but your prayers have been answered, Broxa. We're going to keep the button, though, for safety, because we don't know what Riot Games is going to cook next in terms of champion. But with these changes being implemented, I want to think we're going to have some changes in the bot lane, because Senna has been nerfed as well. Maybe a switch to more hyper-scaling AD carries. We have the crit item changes as well. Talk me through everything that happened, guys.
So I think now we could see a slight shift towards more Siri, more Jinx, more Phelios, because, like you just said, Senna was nerfed, Smolder was nerfed, Kalista is an option, but it has a negative win rate in the LEC, and we're generally really good here at playing, scaling comps, and getting to the mid and late game team fights, and I think that's pretty much what it's going to be all about.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at other regions, starting to see Jinx start to rise up, I think we'll go back towards Xayah. And the other thing I'm kind of happy about is seeing maybe some little bit more armor pen coming through on some of those items as well, because like Shogat getting buffed, Sion getting buffed, Ornn getting buffed. It feels like there's a huge amount of those tanks that could come back into the meta now, and it feels like we're just going to go back towards, hey, we've got a mega AD carry in the bot lane, we've got a mega tank as well. Let's just front to back and see what happens.
It's always the question of knowing which teams is going to adapt to this new patch more, but I don't know, at first sight here like this, which team is more likely to enjoy this type of champions?
The first thing that comes to my mind is BDS.
Yeah,
I was about to say.
Adam logging in Sion, they're going to have a C or any other control mage for Nuke. They're going to have a strong, hyper carry in the bot lane, and it's just going to be so straightforward for them. They're going to really enjoy the front to back, but I think most teams are going to be happy.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of teams that'll be happy to see it coming back in. But I think for teams like, say, maybe Heretics, you end up banning away the Azir. So you can go back to playing, hey, we want to play off of like Jankos, Trimby, look for picks, play towards side lanes, and maybe look for something more like a Talia in the mid lane and that. So I think there are a lot of opportunities to try and vary up the draft now that Azir is back in the meta.
Last few questions for you guys. Is it a welcome change from the viewers of League of Legends, let's say? Is it going to be more enjoyable?
Personally, I kind of find
like
Senna and Smoder kind of boring. So I'm happy to get like, hey, we're getting like a swap up there. But I do find that like if we're just going to go to mega team fights, late game scaling, I'm curious to see what our mid game looks like and if we get as much action as we have been.
I think it's going to be similar to the meta we had in like 2018-19.
Yeah.
There was a lot of hype games back then, so I'm going to have my hopes up.
Let's see what we can see on the Rift then, because as we gear up for the first series, we're going to hear how Nisqy feels about the matchup and what he shared in PGL last week.
Is there a specific team that you would love to play against?
I want to play Vitality. I think they're the top team that I'm the most confident beating.
What exactly do you think makes you that confident then?
I mean, mid lane matchup, I would say. And I think top, I would say Irrelevant is really good. And I think he will do very well into Photon. And I think bot is like even-ish, even though Cars and Hilay been playing very good. Sorry, Das.
Yeah, Irrelevant will dump the Photon. Yeah, I can win against Vito. Bot lane, maybe it's good, maybe it's not.
Yeah, okay, nice one, man.
Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe not so good.
My bad.
We'll see if it's a blessing or a curse on the side of SK here, who wanted to face off against Vitality. But when we look at SK, guys, tough journey to make it to playoffs. 0-3, clutch chicken in the end with a tiebreaker, but that's not how you want to start playoffs at all.
Yeah, not at all. And I think it's, look, there's been weird communication issues coming through in SK. It feels like they aren't on the same page at all. You look at like Irrelevant, who I thought had a fantastic split and individually is performing well, but it's also that individual moments when he comes in towards the mid game that are causing issues where he's going one way, the rest of the team is going the other direction. It feels like we just don't have what has been the core strengths of SK shining anymore.
I mean, that's the thing, disjointed completely. We know that the solo lanes usually are the ones who are going to set the pace for and set up SK for success. Broxa, what do we want to see here? What has been missing from them? And how do they find it back?
Well, I think Nisqy's comment that we just saw was a little bit awkward, but it's also true, right? Like, Irrelevant has been a monster. He has been really solid in the mid lane. Bot lane is a big question mark, but I think it's also going to come down to Isma. Like, I don't think Isma has been bad by any means, but I think his synergy with Nisqy hasn't been as great. They haven't been as aggressive as what we saw from them in the winter split. And I think when you have two players in mid and jungle that are performing, it would be nice to see them fully on the same page. Group up, make those plays together, and then they can really shine, I believe.
Yeah, especially when it felt like that was kind of the two core linchpins of SK was, hey, we've got this really strong mid jungle. We could see how well Nisqy was kind of coordinating Isma to work around him, whereas like, hey, he's stopping recalls back in winter to come and gank mid and the communication's there. And then they tend that pressure into, hey, we can cover bot side, we can play for Irrelevant on carries in the top lane and give him the support that he needs. But that whole system seems to have broken down. And now even when you get to a position where SK has leads, I mean, they've tossed away games that are 8-9k gold leads for themselves. And that is just, when you're at the level that you need to compete in playoffs, you just cannot be giving away those gold leads.
And that's going to be a perfect challenge for them, especially against Vitality today, who looks really strong, and they did look really strong in the regular season. We're going to focus on Vitality, actually, as they recently threatened their coaching staff with none other than Vizicsacsi. You know him if you've been watching Link 10 years ago, so let's talk to him.
Thank you so much, Laura. Hello, everyone. I'm Ginny, joined with Vizicsacsi, who is the positional coach for Vitality. I want to start off with the role of a positional coach, particularly, and how that impacts the player, particularly because you're working with Photon on that top lane. So what does that look like from your perspective?
Yeah, basically, we have like set goals for the player, which are set up for him what to work on every single week. And then as a positional coach, your job is to like look at him within practice games, how he's communicating, how he calls his timers, how his laning phases, like whatever you want to work on. And then basically give him notes and talk with him about it afterwards.
How has that been for you particularly, but for the coaching staff more in general from Vitality? It feels like the team has been progressing so much after every single week from winter to spring, and we are very aware that there's a lot of coaching staff behind the scenes. So what has that been like?
I mean, I think it's insane. I would call like Pat and Mac magicians. Basically, wherever they go, they just create like such a good system, with such a functional system, where they can put like others in to work as well, like such as me, or Carter as well. He's doing a really great job. So I think they are just doing an excellent job, and that's why you can see like this improvement from week by week or from split to split. And I think this is maybe just the beginning for them.
Just the beginning. Okay. And how about you for yourself? Is this just the beginning? What is your long-term goal here?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I'm going to work together them for this split, and afterwards, not anymore. So it's like a one split thing. But of course, the goal is to win the LEC. And
I respect that. That's everybody's goal, right? Well, your first hurdle is going to be SK. Looking at how they have been performing throughout spring, it doesn't feel like the SK we were seeing in winter. They just barely made it through that tiebreaker. How are you going to be approaching this game?
Yeah, I mean, they are definitely having their struggles. We have come in very well prepared to the series, and I think there are not really many surprises they can pull out. Also, the meta is being a bit more fixed right now, so it's more predictable what's going to happen. So yeah, I think we are very well prepared for them.
Thank you so much for the interview. It was lovely speaking to you and for the insight. I appreciate it. Laure, we're going to be heading over back to you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ginny. Always amazing to hear from Vizicsacsi, and I love the mention of the unpredictable in the end, because that's a great segue to the next topic. The unpredictable Hylissang has been a controversial topic in the LEC for a long time, and especially this year, I feel. And guys, that was a fan sign we saw last week. If Hyli dies, we drink. And yeah, I would like to send my respects and my regards to these guys, because during that game, Hyli went 0-8-3. But there's two sides of the Hyli coin, and I know that Vitality's coaching staff said that you're not going to refrain his urges. You have to push the team to actually trust him and trust his wild calls sometimes. So I want to take a look at some of these wild calls here.
Well, as someone who's played with Hylissang for years, I know it's impossible to change the way he is, but I think it's just one of those cases where you have somebody who's able to do something unique at such a high level. And the way I look at the support pool in Europe the past years is that Mickey has been like Mr. Consistent, and then he's been challenging Hyli for like the best of all time support in Europe, where Hyli has extremely high highs but also low lows. And I think, sure, he makes mistakes sometimes, but he also finds those, opportunities that can literally take you to the world final. So I wouldn't be without him. Like, I think he's an amazing player to have in our region.
And I think that's the thing, is like it's impossible to separate Vitality's success away from how Hylissang is playing, right? He does a really good job of controlling stuff in the early game. When he gets to a mid game, you'll oftentimes see him kind of being the main person to follow the map and make sure that they're keeping Vitality in place. And I also think at times, like, I don't think Vitality's objective setup is particularly good, which means that we oftentimes end up leaning on Hylissang to be the one that has to step up and like try and push forward into these aggressive places so we can get the vision that's been lacking around these setups. And I think that's where oftentimes we do see these more crazy plays where he can end up getting caught out as a result of that. But at times there's like, hey, this is genius, but there's definitely the other side where he's gone too far the other direction. And that's, I think, where the dichotomy of this player is like sometimes it comes off and you find those magic moments, other times not so much.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things where you really need to be fully on the same page. I remember when I played with Hyli on Fnatic, there would be moments in scrims where he did something wild. None of us were ready for it. And he's like, guys, go, go, go. And we're like, Hyli, what on earth are you thinking, bro? Like, we're not going to follow you. And then he dies. But then after, when we get to the replay and he explains his thought process, it's actually so smart. This is one of those moments where, he's Khan back in the good old Fnatic G2 days, 2019, I think it was. He backdoors the inhib, which later sets up him and Reckless to literally be able to end the game. Like, no other support in Europe, if not in the entire world, would have gone for the inhib in that moment. I remember thinking when we were in-game, like, what are you doing? Like, we're probably going to lose the game off of this, but then 1 minute later we win. He's just on a whole other level. And
that's why I appreciate the fact that Vitality is trying to push the rest of the players to actually follow him instead. We'll see what happens today on the Rift with Vitality and SK Gaming. 3 more weeks of action here in the LEC to decide which team will join G2 at MSI. It is time to kick off the 2024 Spring Playoffs.